For many months now, railroads have been heavily scrutinized by the American public. Among other things, one of the biggest controversies has been length at which freight trains have become. With these monster trains being potentially miles long, they've stirred up massive concern about their size, especially at railroad crossings, or should one of these trains come off the tracks. These controversies have led many state legislatures to propose the idea of limiting the length of freight trains, with bills placing the maximum length at either 7,500 or 8,500 feet. Any violation to this limit could lead to hundreds of thousands in fines. The question is this really going to solve the freight train problem? By now, it goes without saying that the disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, has led to much of this investigating in American railroad practices. One major scrutinized aspect of the derailment was the length of the train. There's a concern that longer trains are part of the reason for crashes like the one in East Palestine and others like it. And while it's true that multi-mile freights don't have a great track record, they're not always doomed to crash either. But besides length, another factor in the tragedy had to do with the inspection of the rail cars, in this case, the lack thereof. That's being pushed for improvement as well, but that is undoubtedly important. As long as consists are put together carefully, keeping weight distribution in mind, and rail cars are well maintained and inspected, then even the longest of trains will hardly derail. It's not just about the length of the train, but the condition that the train is in. Another one of the biggest reasons used against long trains has to do with when these trains come through crossings. You can find numerous stories that all cover a massive train blocking a crossing in a town and how negative of an impact this is. There are in fact cases where length is a factor at crossings, that is true, and a few thousand feet can make a difference. At the same time, there are also instances where this issue persists even with comparatively shorter trains. Using Google Earth, I measured the length of 7,500-foot trains in relation to the towns these articles take place in, and I did the same thing with 2-mile trains. Admittedly, there are quite a few cases in which the 2-mile train takes up a lot more space, but other times the greater length has little to no additional impact at all. And while longer trains do take more time to start and stop, either way, trains are going to be stopped long enough to become a nuisance. Regardless of length, problems like these aren't always as simple as putting a limit on how long trains can be. There are times when bigger trains do truly have a larger impact at crossings, but there will also be times where even the shorter ones can still cause crossing issues. It all just depends on the location and frequency of crossings in certain towns. The well-being of workers is important. Two-man crews are important. General safety and precautions are all important. But do these have to come at the expense of making trains shorter? Do longer trains absolutely have to be sacrificed to keep the country in check? I'm not saying every train should be 2 miles long, because they shouldn't. But I do think there can be a balance between size and safety. The railroads can keep their mega trains, workers can keep their jobs, and the supply chain can be at ease. And that's why, of all the proposals brought up by states, Washington's bill is my favorite one. It also includes a 7,500-foot threshold, but it also includes the exception that trains are allowed to extend to 10,000 feet if extra crew members are aboard. This is a bit better, as 10,000 feet is just under 2 miles and gives trains some wiggle room to grow without making them too massive. At the same time, it also ensures job security for workers and overall safety. Of all the bills out there, this one to me seems like the most fair and balanced for everyone. But whatever is decided upon, if train lengths do start being regulated, I don't think that 7,500 feet is going to be enough. Mega trains are mostly a product of precision scheduled railroading, as its use of combining several trains into one leads to an inevitably long consist. However, there are other freights out there that still just happen to be over the limit, not due to PSR or train combinations, but simply because of how they're operated. So, this law which targets the largest of trains could also unintentionally affect the comparatively smaller ones, even if the latter caused much less disruption. That said, 8,500 feet could be a little more fair, though I still don't know if it would be a flawless solution. Besides making money, long trains can have their actual benefits in the business world, primarily being able to move more freight when it counts. In scenarios such as the shipping crisis of 2021, or in a massive demand for energy, it's very helpful to be able to transport as much of a needed product as possible. and yet you can only move so much when working with less than a mile and a half. After everything the country has witnessed, wanting to limit train length does make sense, and I do think it can be executed well. But in my opinion, it's gonna have to be more than 75 to 8,500 feet. I agree that when made too long, long trains can be bad, but I also think that problems can arise if they are made too short.